back to the Springs in the Desert podcast. I'm Allie, and I'm joined today by two women who you may know from other parts of Springs in the Desert. They've both participated in various parts of this ministry through retreats and blog posts, but they have not yet been on the podcast, so I'm really excited to welcome Alissa and Katie. And we're going to be having a conversation today. This is National Infertility Awareness Week while this episode is airing. And as you've probably seen from some of the content we've already put out, that's actually a secular campaign that we are kind of co-opting as Springs in the Desert and using to spread awareness about infertility from a Catholic perspective. So please stay tuned all week from our social media pages, our website, and this podcast as we're going to seek to spread awareness about infertility. And our goal with this is really twofold. We want to reach more people who are bearing this cross, whether it's primary or secondary infertility, any kind of a diagnosis, whether you're just starting out trying to conceive or you've faced infertility for a long time in your past childbearing years. We want to reach more people who need this kind of support in our community. So that's one goal of all of our National Infertility Awareness Week. And the second goal is really to provide content that you, as someone who's dealing with infertility, can pass along to people in your life, in your circles, who may want to know better how to support you and your spouse and other friends who may be facing this. So we're hopeful that this podcast episode and other content that we produce this week is something that you could send along to your doctor, to your family members, to your friends, to your pastor, to other clergy that you may know who want to support those of us who are facing this difficult cross. So we welcome you to this episode, and again, please check out all of our offerings during this National Infertility Awareness Week. So to kick off the conversation, really today what we want to talk about is ways that we have felt supported by those people in our lives. And we're all, Alissa, Katie, and I are at different places in our infertility journeys. I know, like me, I've been married for 5 years. I know Katie and Alissa have each been married for longer than me. But we want to just share some of our experiences with you that you can share with other people about how that support has looked. Like what are times that our friends, our family members, our pastors have supported us, and we felt just that just edifying and that support and love that sometimes is so difficult to come by. And sometimes, I think we need to also acknowledge that it's not easy always to know how to support those people who are struggling with infertility or loss. So I know for me, like I've had family members sometimes say to me, like, I just don't know what to say. I don't know how to tell you that I'm pregnant. I don't know how to deliver this information. So for anyone who's asked themselves that question, we just kind of want to provide some insights for times that we have felt supported. So I want to kind of split this into two different talking points. First, kind of talking more about the family and friends perspective, and then moving more into like the church and pastors and clergy, and that big topic that always comes up this time of year of Mother's Day, and ways that we have felt supported through that time that can be really challenging for those of us struggling with infertility. So just to start it off with family and friends, I want to open it up to you, Alissa and Katie, if there's like one experience off the top of your mind where you had been approached maybe by a family member or a friend, perhaps in the situation of a pregnancy announcement, or someone who's just really been there for you. Is there anything that sticks out in your mind where you have felt that support as you've been dealing with your own experience of infertility?
Yeah, I can definitely think of a time. My best friend actually, she struggled with infertility as well. She also has secondary infertility like myself, but we were both struggling at the same time and didn't really know that we were both struggling at the same time. And eventually she wound up pregnant and told me, and I was overjoyed, and equally felt a little bit, that pang of, oh, I wish that was me. And so I kind of poured my guts, and she was like, oh my goodness. And she had almost an identical story to my story. And we just dropped everything, gave each other a hug, and she just like, don't lose hope. You can do this. And if you don't, you're such, you have all these other things you can do, and I'm here for you. And, just really made it feel like I was going to be part of something, and that she would be there for me. She wouldn't shy away from stuff, but she also wouldn't throw anything in my face, I guess, so to speak. And she's been that way ever since. She ended up getting pregnant again, and I was struggling again, and it was the same thing. And this time she kind of was like, and I was like, you're pregnant, aren't you? And it was the big hug again. And so just a hug, I guess, is the moral of that story. Sometimes that's all you need, is just someone to not say anything and have open arms.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, hugs are good. Been appreciating them more lately with this pandemic here that we've been having.
They're rare and precious. I had a woman I used to babysit for. She emailed me out of the blue to let me know that she had prayed a holy hour for me. And that was just like really touching, because I haven't shared too much with her personally, but she sees my parents like at daily mass all the time. And actually she works for the diocese, and I had gone to a healing event through the diocese, and I had shared a little bit with her there. But I feel like sometimes people will ask how they can pray for me, and I feel like I'd rather just get a text or an email saying, hey, I just finished a rosary for you, or hey, I just prayed a holy hour for you. And I just felt like I felt really special, because the way that the email was worded, that holy hour was entirely for me. And that's just such a beautiful gift of her time for the intention of like my healing and a pregnancy. So that was, I was really touched.
Yeah, I think Casey recently wrote a really beautiful blog post about prayer and how her experience through infertility and prayer, and how, different points in her journey she's prayed in different ways. But what's meant so much is when other people have kind of carried that prayer for her at times where she felt like she couldn't pray anymore. And I've had that experience too, with especially when people say like, I pray for you. I've had several friends, when they've announced something to like a pregnancy to me, say like, I pray for you guys every day, like by name. I pray for you every day. And that, like, just that personal, like you're saying, Katie, just that, like, I don't know, there's something about just knowing that someone is dedicatedly like giving that time and that that personal touch, just praying for you specifically. And I think that goes a really long way. I know for me, I have one particular friend who I've been on this journey with for several years. And she had a miscarriage, sadly, about, I don't know, three years ago maybe. And we had both been struggling with infertility. And when she told me that, it was just like a really, it was a moment for me of just recognizing like what a miracle life is, and that, like, I don't know, like I felt like I could be there for her in a unique way, not because I've experienced that, but because like I knew the longing part of infertility. And so it really brought us like closer together. And then there were a couple more years of just like a lot of conversations about struggling with infertility and like trying to find purpose. And anyway, when she did eventually get pregnant, I like was so surprised that I felt like genuinely happy for her. And I think part of that was because the way that she was so sensitive, like having gone through, several years of this infertility journey together, she was just so sensitive to how all of this news and everything would make me feel that it was like, I didn't really feel sad at all, because I was just like, oh my gosh, the miracle of life and having gone through that loss with her. And then And then the way that she told me, and even with her baby shower, she was like, you don't have to come, and it's okay. I'm like, I want to be there. Like, this is a gift from God. And anyway, it's just been a really special friendship. And I guess going through that with another person, we were talking about Alissa, it's just amazing, like the intimacy that can develop. And I think it's a journey. Like, you may, there's highs and there's lows, and I know that like other things that we may face in life, difficulties, longings, because it doesn't end, right? Like, when you get pregnant and you have that miracle baby, like it doesn't end all of the longings and the difficulties in life. So I just know that like our friendship will probably, I'm hopeful, like we'll continue to be able to support each other, like having walked this path. And I think that's just such a gift to be able to do that with friends. Another friend I have who's single, it's a similar thing, right? I can understand like her longing to be married. And so, I don't know, it's just like this longing that really brings you closer together. So I think that's a really hopeful thing, just that we can be vulnerable with each other, and that can really strengthen our friendships.
I feel like going...
so talking...
Oh, I'm sorry, can I add something real quick?
Yes.
My sister actually, she has gone through some things similar to me, and that's another place where being able to talk to someone having gone through it, and almost, I don't want to say being a mentor, but being able to know what all the things mean, medical terminology, or just charting and all these things that you don't tend to talk about with people or know about unless you've gone through it. It's nice to have someone that's been through it, but it's also nice to be the person to be able to support. So for people who have gone through it, I feel like we can build this scaffold to hold others that are coming up through the process to, support them through it and everything too. So.
Yeah, and I think just for people who are struggling with infertility, another point to make is just, and we've talked about this on other podcast episodes, but one thing that I've had to do is when I have gotten like not a great experience, it's like challenging my own assumption that person didn't care, or like it may not be that they're deliberately trying to, make it awkward or not support me. It's just that they may not know how best to do that, which is, again, what we're trying to accomplish with this National Infertility Awareness Week, is acknowledging that it is difficult sometimes to know what to say. And if you haven't experienced it, it can be difficult to enter into. So I just want to kind of on the other side say, the challenge for those of us struggling with this is to be forgiving, I think, and charitable when things are said that aren't as sensitive as maybe we would hope for. So it's both sides, I think.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's kind of transition a little bit and talk, unless you had any other kind of more family or friends examples.
This is kind of, it's random, but it's friends that I've made through Instagram, like sharing about infertility, being able to pray for each other, like when there's like surgery dates coming up or whatever. And then I've recently had 2 Instagram friends who have messaged me, who are pregnant, and they let me know that they like feel for me still being in this place of longing for the gift of life in my womb, and that they're offering the discomforts of their pregnancy and the difficulty that they're going to face during labor. They're offering up for the intention, for my intentions.
Yeah.
And that's been really, it's really meaningful. Both these women had struggled with infertility for some season. And so just, they know how I'm feeling. And then for them to recognize that the difficulties that they're experiencing, the discomforts that they're experiencing, they can offer it up for their sisters who are still waiting. And that's been really beautiful. And like you said with your friend, Allie, just how like you feel it's not jealousy when you hear that somebody's expecting who has been waiting, as long or longer as you. It's this joy, because it just, I think, like you said, life is truly a gift. It's a miracle. And I think it's also like, it's a source of hope. These other women who have the same conditions that you have, or have been, trying for as long as you have, and they're finally pregnant, and it's just so exciting. And in a way, like when you've been praying for them as well, you're kind of like a fairy godmother of sorts to their children.
Yeah.
So it's another child that you're a spiritual mother for, which is really beautiful.
Yeah. That just made me think, it's somewhat unrelated, but I've been thinking about kind of that hope that we want to pass on. And I think one thing that parents or people that are in a different phase of life, maybe it's an aunt or uncle, or, someone who's past kind of having young kids in the home, one way that they can support, I felt supported by those people, is when they just kind of remind me of like the broader context, because I think when we're in this phase of childbearing years, or being, newly married or young in marriage, or a certain phase, it can be like your whole focus, right? Mm-hmm. And it can be very consuming. So I think one way that I have felt supported by those kind of outside of that is just like a reminder about like the difficulties they face that maybe I can't see, because I'm focused more on the infertility, if that makes sense. I don't know if y'all can relate to that. Like parents or aunts and uncles or grandparents, even, to ways they can support.
Well, I think, like you were saying about how the longing never goes away. Like you long to meet your husband, and you meet your husband, and you get married, and then you long to have a child, and maybe you that takes years, or it never happens. But I feel like even we're in a season of secondary infertility right now. We have a 5-year-old, and even then there's this longing, and I think we need to recognize that there's a space that only God can fill. And I know, like, on my cycle day 1 and 2 days, that's like a really hard thing to hear. It's like, oh yeah, God can fill this space for me that I'm longing. But it's true. I think like nothing is going to be perfect this side of heaven. And, like you can think, oh, well, I'll be happy when XYZ happens. But I think, like you were saying, how people of an older generation just reminding us, like, there's always difficulties, there's always challenges, there's always sorrows. And that's just part of living in a fallen world. And I think like recognizing that the longing that we feel at the deeper place is God, like God's presence, and trying to fill ourselves through the sacraments, fill ourselves going to adoration, spiritual reading, things like that.
Okay, so let's transition more onto the support that we have felt from the church, from particular clergy, or maybe it's been, I know, Katie, you had some experiences with marriage prep and other things in your church that you wanted to specifically talk about. And we are going to do a whole lot on Mother's Day coming up here in a couple weeks, but we can touch on that too. I'll just share one story where there's a lot of negative stories about Mother's Day masses. For those of us struggling with infertility, if you're not in that category and you're listening, Mother's Day is probably the most difficult. Probably 99% of women who are dealing with infertility would tell you that Mother's Day is like the most difficult day of the year, because there's just this very much focus on motherhood in a particular way, and those of us who don't have that can feel very much left out. So one way that I felt really supported by clergy in the past has been during Mother's Day, when the priest in Mass actually acknowledged like the different forms of motherhood and the longing that some women feel for children or more children, and just acknowledged that like every woman is called to mother in some way. And I had never experienced that before, and it was just a really beautiful affirmation of like where I'm at in being a married woman that hasn't been blessed with children. So I'm guessing that wonderful priest had, probably had a conversation with a woman or a couple before, where he had been just made aware of that situation. So I was just really grateful for that, that experience that I had.
I had a very similar situation, where same kind of thing, the priest acknowledged, all different types of motherhood. This is actually a spoiler. There's a blog post that I wrote that's coming out at some point, coming up to Mother's Day. But, he not only acknowledged married women and just adult women, he said, and all the children, all the little girls that are future women, and all your roles as mothers that you will have in the future, and invited everyone up, and we all got a nice little carnation, and that just warmed my heart to see every female go get their flower, and just because we all do have some sort of mothering. We may not even know what it is yet. Those little, 4-year-olds, they just got a flower, but within them, they have some sort of mother brewing and growing. So I thought that was really beautiful that he did that. So I'm going to encourage my husband to do that too.
Yeah. I think it's important to acknowledge the difficulty of Mother's Day for people experiencing infertility. Just like, I know I've heard women who just don't attend Mass on that Sunday because it's just too difficult. And so, like, to somehow make our priests aware that this, by exclusively recognizing mothers who have given birth or adopted exclusively, it's causing other women to, like, I would say, like, not going to Mass on a Sunday. They're sinning, but it's because they need to protect their heart, because it will, like, just kind of throw things off for weeks, because it's that painful. And I don't know, like, at what point it became, like, liturgically appropriate, like Mother's Day isn't a Catholic feast day. So I'm not sure why it happens every year, but your stories show how priests can kind of make it in a way that doesn't point out what some of us haven't been blessed with. And so I think that's important.
Yeah. And I think that, like, acknowledging too, at the same time, like, that physical motherhood too isn't like this sugar-coated like Disneyland sort of a experience. Like, I don't know. I just think that it's both, right? I think by elevating, like, the struggle and the reality of, like, some mothers' children, like, their children grow up and they don't have a great relationship with their adult children, and, like, that's a hardship. And so I could see that being very isolating for those people as well. So
for adults at Mass who don't have a good relationship with their own mother, Mother's Day being triggering. Yeah.
Right. So I think that just acknowledging, like, we've kind of been saying that, life is full of a lot of longing, and we live in a fallen world, and just being aware of that, I think, is important for days like Mother's Day that can tend to be very, like, hallmarky and, and everything else. But I wanted to mention too, another thing is, and this goes in with what you were saying, as we were preparing, Katie, about the natural family planning classes that are part of preparing for marriage when you become married in the church, is just, I think if clergy and the church in general could really focus more on fruitfulness in a broader sense, not to downgrade the importance and beauty of physical motherhood, which is just so beautiful the way that we articulate that in the church, but to also emphasize the fruitfulness, like, that it may take in other forms. I think that goes for both Mother's Day and for just general, like, preparing for marriage. And, for people whose kids are out of the house, like, the call to fruitfulness, like, doesn't end, and can take different forms. So I wanted to kick it back over to you, Katie. I know you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, actually, one thing that just came to mind now is I know there's been times where I've gone to Mass and there's a particular scripture. I feel like it's usually the Psalms where it talks about, God's going to bless you and you're going to have a quiver full of children and, you're going to be a fruitful vine around your table because you believe in God. And those verses are just like, they hurt. And that would be a really easy Sunday for Father to say, let's talk about infertility. And like, fruitfulness does not mean having 8+ kids. And there's other ways that couples are called to fruitfulness, but then also acknowledging that the church's beautiful teaching of being open to life does not have one single manifestation. There's a wide variety of what open to life looks like. And so just that would be a great moment to show support and solidarity for those couples in your parish that you might not even know are struggling with that. But, like I've gone to Mass and heard verses like that and just gone home and the rest of my day just is wrecked. And I know like if a priest had read that with couples carrying this cross in mind and mentioned it somehow in the homily, it would have been very healing. And it could be very healing. So it doesn't have to be every single time there's like a verse that relates to fruitfulness, but I think that would be great. But what you were saying about natural family planning, and I think also tying back into just like the miracle that life is, I know when I took natural family planning, it seemed that our struggle would be with having too many children. Like we were going to have to be careful, or we were going to, we wouldn't fit in our 15-passenger van. We would need to get a second 15-passenger van because being open to life means you're going to get pregnant every 2 years or year and a half, or, and I think like the term natural family planning has just like, I really hate it now. And I feel like maybe if we could shift it to like fertility awareness, maybe would be helpful, just because the word planning just gives you this false sense of control. And if I chart and if we, time our intimacy, we're going to get pregnant and we're going to have lots of children like we want to. And that's just not the case. And I think with those classes, maybe throwing in some statistics about like, I think it's something like 20%, you have a 20% chance of every part's working exactly how it's supposed to each cycle. So, I mean, like pregnancy is like a huge miracle. And I feel like sometimes with the NFP classes, that's not stressed enough. I don't know.
I agree. I didn't get a lot of NFP stuff when I did my pre-K. I guess it was just the nature of the program that we did. But I do know when we did start trying to temp and chart and everything, my hormones are just all over. So there was no amount of temperatures to take or things to chart that would make any sense. And so the word planning was where I was like, there's no plan. My body has no plan right now. So I don't know how it's going to fit into yours. But yeah, I agree. It makes it sound like it's a pretty box with a bow on top, and it's great. And I know that it's something that works so nicely for many people, but making room for others and calling it fertility planning or just awareness, or words mean something sometimes. So I like those choices. We'll have to write some letters.
Or even calling the entire class like fruitfulness, and then talking, like using that as a way to kind of talking about like, what does it mean to be fruitful, and life is a miracle, and it can go different ways, and you might be on this end of the bell curve, or you might be on the other.
Yeah, because it's a scale. It's like for everything. It's not cookie cutter.
Yeah. I love that, Allie, how you could, I mean, the instructors just discussing other ways that married couples are called to fruitfulness. I think there's a line in the catechism about like through hospitality and charity, and there's another word, but just like it's not strictly bearing biological children. By just your home being a place of faith where you welcome others and you bring others to Christ, you're being fruitful.
Yeah, and I think that's, whether or not you have biological children, I think that it's a beautiful witness when I see family, like my sister who's blessed with many children, 5 children, is like, when I see her doing that, that's a beautiful witness. And, she isn't just called to be a biological mother, and that's like the extent of her fruitfulness. So, I think it's an all-encompassing idea that we're talking about here, and it really, I think, broadens and brings us closer to like, truly like what it means to be married and to have our love glorify God, really. So, well, we're getting close to the end of our time here, but just to kind of recap, if you are struggling with infertility or pregnancy loss, like, we are here. We want to be a support and walk with you. You're not alone. Please check out more of our resources, this podcast, our website, our Facebook group, and Instagram, and please reach out. We want to be here for you as you're dealing with this, no matter where you are on the path. And then secondly, if you're listening and you are wanting to support someone, whether you're a friend, a family member, a pastor, or someone just in your church community who wants to walk alongside couples who are struggling with infertility, hopefully you've taken away some words that can help you to do so. But again, thank you for your willingness to walk alongside those of us struggling with infertility. Your prayers, your love, your support means a lot, and we're really grateful for you. So any last words that either of you want to leave everyone with today?
Just thank you for having me. This was fun.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And again, please check out all of our other resources during National Infertility Awareness Week, and please share them with everyone in your circles who could benefit. Finally, we have an exciting retreat coming up. You've heard about it likely if you're following us. It's the Mother's Day annual retreat that we're putting on virtually. This year, we're exploring the theme of belonging, and we're going to have a number of wonderful talks, both live and pre-recorded, and we just encourage you to go to our website, www.springsinthedesert.org, where you can register. It's completely free, and it's going to be a really wonderful opportunity for a particularly difficult time of year, as we discussed on this episode, Mother's Day weekend. We know it's a really hard time for those of us who are struggling, and we want to be there to support you during that weekend. So go to our website to check out more about that.